So thankful that all of you are here today, and we are going to look into Nehemiah chapter 2. We're in a series in Nehemiah all about good leadership and how to lead well. How many of you have something in your life that you lead? Can I see your hands? All right, the rest of you, go ahead and let's try this one more time, because see, if you're a mom or a dad or a grandma or a grandpa, you're a leader. Okay, so let's try it now. How many of you have something you lead? There we go. All right, you lead your family at least, right? Even if you're not a manager at work, the truth is you can lead, you can influence, you can be a person, instead of just being a thermometer and registering the temperature where you're at, you get to be a thermostat and you get to change the temperature, right? Thermometer just tells what the temperature is around it. A thermostat says, I decide what the temperature is going to be. And I want you to change from being a thermometer wherever you go to being a thermostat. You get to pick what the temperature is around you. Now, not in this room necessarily, but I'm talking about in your life, in your family, in your workplace, everywhere else. Yeah. Let's go and I want to start with a little story. Did you hear about the Little League coach, Simon Sinek, in his book called Start With Why? He tells a story about a Little League coach that was trying to encourage his team after they had gotten another bad beating. I mean, it wasn't good. They hadn't been winning. They'd been beaten pretty bad and pretty soundly just about every game they played. And he said, guys, now listen, it doesn't matter who wins or loses, it's how you play the game. And one of the little boys frowned and said, then why do we keep score? Good point, right? Like it's not just the idea of how you go about things. You want to get something done. You want to accomplish something. You want to win. You want to have a mission, and you want to win. You want to get your mission accomplished. And if nobody keeps score in your life, well then, how do you know if your mission is getting accomplished, right? Sometimes you've got to be able to count and pay attention to the scoreboard so you can know whether you're winning or not. Simon Sinek, I mentioned his name a minute ago. He wrote a book called Start With Why. And he says that a lot of companies and people start with what is the question. What do we do? What are we going to do? And he said some companies would say, well, we make computers. But he said, what if instead of saying, here's what we do, what if we ask the question, why do we exist first? Why do we do what we do? He said, Apple computer, and now maybe you guys don't do Apple or you don't have, how many have iPhones? Anybody got iPhones here this morning? A bunch of you got iPhones. Now, I'm an Android guy. Don't shoot me, okay? Don't throw anything at me. But Apple makes a good product. I'll admit it. They make a good product. And they took over the mobile phone world for a long time, and the reason they did, he says, Steve Jobs did not start by saying, what are we going to do? Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make phones. Instead, he said he started with why. He said, this company believes that computers and phones should be beautifully designed and user-friendly. We think we exist to challenge the status quo in every part of life and insist on only the best and the smoothest experience possible. We happen to make computers and phones. Would you like to buy one? He said most companies go like this. They say, we make computers and phones. We think they're pretty good. You want to buy one? And he said the other pitch says, we have a why. Do you agree with our why? Would you like to buy what we're selling? Now let me take that idea and I want to bring it over to your life. What is your why? You see, if you get up every day and all you have is a what, here's what I'm going to do today. If you're a mom, you say, I'm going to do laundry. If you're a homeschooling mom, you say, I'm going to do laundry and teach. If you got a new baby, you say, I'm going to change diapers. That's my what for today. But I want to ask, let's go beyond the what and let's say why. Why? Why do you do what you do? And it's not enough just to say, because I'd like to have a clean house, right? Because is there a deeper why behind what you do? If you're going to lead, you're going to have to figure out more than just your what. You're going to have to figure out why. This week, I walked through the Walmart. In fact, it was last night, actually. I walked through the checkout counter at Walmart. And I walked up to a young man there checking out groceries that I have connected with before and talked with, and because I try to be intentional about reaching out to people and try to be intentional about making a difference, and so I don't go through the self-checkout line very much unless it's just one thing and the rest of them are back to the freezers. You know, I go through the line and I try to find the same people and go through the same 2 or 3 people every time, because I want to keep connecting with people and just make a difference and try to. And so I walked through, and last week I went through, and he was pretty discouraged. And I said, man, how are things this week? Any better? And he said, no, not really. Just trying to find a reason to keep living. He's looking for a why. He's got a what. He's going to Walmart, right? He's got to go to what? And he's got to go to Walmart. He's got to do, this is what I'm going to do today, right? I'm going to check out groceries. But what he's looking for is a why. Because sometimes a what is not enough. You've got to know why. And if you're going to make a difference in your family, it is not enough for me to come to my kids and say, here's what you're going to do. You're going to do whatever I say. You got to know why. They got to know why. I've got to have a why for them to do it. And when I was a kid growing up, at first it might work when they're little, but as they get older, they need to know why. They need to know why it's important that they obey. They need to know why it matters that they go through life. They need to know why it's important that they do well in school. Not just, you come home with a B and I'll whoop the living daylights out. You can't do it, right? There's got to be a why behind it. And not just your comfort, because I want my life to be easier. No, it's got to be something important. What is your why? Now, if I come to my kids at the age that they're getting to, especially older ones, and I say to them, you're going to go to church. Why? Because it's Sunday. No, let me tell you why. We actually do have this conversation. My wife is amazing at this because she knows her why. And she'll say to the kids, now, you're not just going to sit there, you're going to sing. And you're going to listen, and here's why. Because it's important that you worship and that you recognize God and you know Him and that you proclaim His goodness. This is our church family, and we're doing this together because we believe we share these values and we share these stories. She's not just communicating the what you're going to do, but the why you're going to do it. If you have a big why, then you can live through almost any kind of what. Am I making sense? If you have a really big why, you can live through all kinds of whats, right? As long as you know why you're doing what you're doing, you can take some trouble. You can take some persecution. You can take some difficulty and some pain if you have a why. I just joined a gym. Why? Okay. Why? Thank you. All right. And it's not enough for you to go to the gym and have a what. It's not enough. Because after a while, the what doesn't look very fun. You go and you're like, oh, this is the 13th machine I've been on today. This one, I don't even know the name of the muscle it works, right? And you do like, ugh. And I'm tired, and I'm feeling a little bit, at my stomach, and you better have a why so you'll be able to go through the necessary what. Right? Ernest Shackleton. Anybody ever heard the name Ernest Shackleton? Ernest Shackleton was a South Pole explorer. He's a very fascinating story. You need to check it out sometime. They made a movie about it. There have been books written about it. Ernest Shackleton was going to go on a mission to take a crew to the South Pole. He wanted to be the person to make it to the South Pole. He actually, the expedition actually almost died in the process of getting back to safety. But it's a powerful story. Here's what he did. When he wanted to go to the South Pole, he wanted to collect a crew, a team to go with him. And he put an advertisement in the newspaper. Here's what he said. Men wanted for hazardous journey. Small wages, bitter cold, months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return, doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. Now, I find this very interesting. You know what he was doing? If he'd have just, if it was just what was going to happen only, he might not get the right kind of guys. He wanted men who had a why. He wanted men who could take any kind of what because they had a why. He wanted men who were like, yeah, come on, let's do it. The chance of honor and success might not make it back, I'm in. He wanted that kind of guy. And by the way, he got the kind of crew he's looking for, and they made it back home. It's an incredible story. You really need to go check it out. He found men who shared his why to make the what of the journey. Now, the story of Nehemiah, all of that is an introduction, okay? The story of Nehemiah is the story of a man who found his why. He found the why, and they're going to go through some really hard what, but he knew why he was doing it, and when he knew his why, he could take any kind of journey, at least for a while. Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 1. We're going to start reading there. You don't have it I don't have it on your handout today since I'm not using one, but if you want to grab the Bible that's there in front of you, you can in the book rack, you can use that. Nehemiah chapter 2 and verse 1. In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was brought for him, I took the wine and gave it to the king. Now, if you recall, Nehemiah was the cupbearer to the king. He would taste the king's food and wine first and then make sure it wasn't poisoned. So then he would give it to the king. So he took it to the king. He was the one responsible for making sure, and that guy would be sitting there in the presence of the king. So it wasn't like a throwaway position. It was a very influential position because you get to sit in on all the king's meals. You get to talk with the king. You wind up being a trusted advisor. And so it says here, he said, I had not been sad in his presence before. Now, Nehemiah had been brokenhearted, if you recall, when he had heard that the walls of Jerusalem, where God's people had gone back to after their captivity in Babylon, they had gone back, a group of them had, but then they heard from them and he said, how is it in Jerusalem? How are things? He said, oh, it's bad. The walls are broken down, the gates are burned with fire, it's horrible. The people are in disgrace, they're always in danger, they can't live life because there's no safety, there's no security. There's lots of enemies all around. And Nehemiah was crushed by this news. He wept, he mourned, he fasted and prayed. And then he goes in to the king's presence on this day. And he lets his face be sad. So the king asked me, why does your face look so sad when you are not ill? Nehemiah, you feeling okay? I'm fine. Why is your face sad? This can be nothing but sadness of heart. And then he said, I was very much afraid. Now, Nehemiah had been planning to do this for a while, but you know that moment where it's go time and your stomach knots up? You know that moment where you're like, you got to step out. This is it. This is the moment right here. And his stomach knots up. You're not immune to, just because you've got a good plan, you're not immune to that feeling. Okay, my little girl is starting to work through the process of trying to step out and take new territory, new steps, and sometimes her stomach gets knotted up. And I just explained to her, it's all right. You're just, it's that excited / scared feeling. You just learn to live with that as a person. As a grown-up, you got to step out. You got to be willing to try and fail. John Wayne said, courage is being scared to death and saddling up anyway, right? That's the idea. Nehemiah had courage. He's scared, but he's going to do it anyway. Here we go. Verse 3, but I said to the king, may the king live forever. Why should my face not look sad when the city where my fathers are buried lies buried in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire? Now, that's his why right there. That's his why. I'm not okay with this. Remember last week I talked about you got to get to that Popeye moment where you say, that's all I can stands, I can't stands no more. And you got to be willing to say, I'm done. For the glory of God, for the goodness of Him and His reputation and all of that, I'm not taking this anymore. And Nehemiah had found his why. And now he's going to lean into it. His why was great. But now, it's go time. And when your why is good, you got a big why, then you got to be willing to have a strategy and put forth a plan. Because the king is going to ask him and say, well, what are you going to do about it? And there comes a moment where sincerity is not enough. You also got to have strategy. Now this is important. Hear me out here, because I have watched people say, I want to change my life. I'm not okay. It's not good. I've just got to change my life. I've got to do it. And they're sincere. I really believe that they want to change. Like the pain is enough that they're like, I got to do something different. The problem is they have no plan to move forward. They're just, all they've got is some pain, and they don't really know what they're going to do. They're just like, I'm going to turn over a new leaf. That's not a plan. That's not a strategy. That's not a, well, first we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. That's not a strategy. That's just, they're sincere, but there's no plan. And so then when hard times come, they're real sincere, but they think that just because maybe they've watched too many Disney movies, they think that just having a desire for it to be different and everything's going to work out in the end. But it isn't always so, is it? You and I both know that's true. You have a desire to, I'm going to make a change, but you got to have a plan for how you're going to get there too. Some leaders have sincerity, they just don't have any strategy. Right? Like, I really want to raise good kids, but they haven't thought through what they're going to teach them and how they're going to do it and what the plan is and what they're not going to let them do and what they are going to let them do and how they are going to let them dress and how they're not going to let them dress and what they are going to let them watch and what they're not going to let them watch. They haven't thought through any of those kind of things. They just said, well, I want to raise good kids. They're sincere, but they never have a strategy. They haven't thought through about whether they're going to be in church and what services they're going to attend and why they're going to do it and how are they going to make the kids act and what are they going to... Am I making sense? Some people want to have a great marriage. On that day of the wedding, I think most couples are sincere. Right? Most of them are sincere. Most of them are standing up there and they really mean when they say in sickness and in health to love and to cherish till death do us part. Most of them mean that. The problem is, do they have a strategy for dealing with it? Right? What are the plans? What are the steps you're going to take to stay connected with that girl? Well, putting God first is a great one. That's fantastic. But then even what does that look like? How are we going to put God first? Are we going to put Him first in our finances and in our money and our time and in our evenings and in our time together? Are we going to pray together? Are we going to read the Scripture together? Are we going to go to church together? Are we going to am I making sense to you? You got to have some kind of plan. Sincerity alone won't get you there. If you got a great why, you're going to have to figure out your what to go after it. All right? Nehemiah is going to do that. Let's look at verse 4. The king said to me, what is it you want? Aha, there it is. The king is now saying, well, what do you need? And some people they don't recognize. Everybody recognizes opportunity on the backside. You got to learn to recognize opportunity when it's coming towards you, right? You got to recognize opportunity from the front. Everybody can see opportunity after it passes by. Oh, that was my chance. But you got to learn to see what it looks like when it's developing. And Nehemiah was ready. Man, he was ready. When the king said, what do you want? Nehemiah had an answer. Let's look at it. First of all, I love this phrase. He said, then I prayed to the God of heaven. Now, I love this little whispered prayer, just kind of slid in the middle of this conversation. Charles Spurgeon said, "How dare we cry to God in the battle if we have not cried to Him while buckling on the armor?" Right? This is not the first time Nehemiah has prayed. He has been praying, he's been seeking the Lord, he's been fasting, he's been making a plan, but then when it's go time, there have been lots of times, sometimes in conversations with some of y'all, where I've said, "Lord, help me right now." Right? Because I don't know the answer to that question. Right? That's a hard thing. It's what you're going through is difficult. And God, help me right now. Right? Just under the breath, just a quick whispered prayer. "Lord, you got to help me. I need you right now." So if you've got a why, I want to see my whole family saved. I want to see my kids grow up to love the Lord. I want to see my marriage last for 50 more years. I want to see whatever it is. What your why is. I want to see our church grow. I want to see the city impacted. I want to see things change in the South Side. I'm glad you've got sincerity. But if somebody asks you, "How can I help?" what would you tell them? Okay, good. But what would you tell them for the rest of it? How can I help? What do you need? What's your plan? What's your strategy? Look at verse 5. Nehemiah knows exactly what he wants. "And I answered the king, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in your sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my fathers are buried so I can rebuild it." Then the king, with the queen sitting beside him, asked me, "How long will your journey take? When will you get back?" And it pleased the king to send me, so I set a time. He's got a time frame. He's got a plan. He's got a mission. He's got a what? He's got a time frame. In verse 7, "I also said to him, if it pleases the king, may I have letters to the governor of Trans-Euphrates, so that region, so they will provide me safe conduct until I arrive in Judah." So he's thought through logistics and security. Verse 8, "And may I have a letter to Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, so he'll give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel by the temple, and for the city wall, and for the residence that I will occupy. And because the gracious hand of my God was upon me, the king granted my request." He's thought through supplies and expenses and lodging. He's thought through the people who are going to take care of it. He's thought himself clear enough to be able to succinctly ask, "Here's what I'm going to need. Would you help me?" Now that's amazing. This is leadership. He's thought this through. Here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it, and here's the plans we're going to put in place. And because the gracious hand of my God was upon me, God, the king, granted my request. So I went to the governors of Trans-Euphrates and gave them the king's letters, and the king had also sent army officers and cavalry with me. In verse 10, when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite, two bad guys, they're going to show up again later, heard about this, they were very much disturbed that someone had come to promote the welfare of the Israelites. And I went to Jerusalem. And after staying there 3 days, I set out during the night with a few men. I had not told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem. There were no mounts with me except the one I was riding on. So he kind of sneaks out of Dodge. He goes out to survey. You know why? Because he's on the ground, and you know the old saying in the army, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy? You ever heard that old saying in the military? They say no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. You got to be able to adapt and adjust and deal with new realities. So he goes and he's like, "Okay, now we're going to re-strategize one more time." So he goes out and he surveys the territory. He's looking at what's going to need to be done here, and he rides around the city, looks at the broken down wall. By night, I went out through the valley gate toward the Jackal Well and the Dung Gate, examining the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken down, and its gates, which had been destroyed by fire. I moved on toward the Fountain Gate and the King's Pool, but there wasn't enough room there for my mount to get through. So I went up the valley by night, examining the wall. Finally, I turned back and re-entered through the valley gate. So he circled all the way around the city. The officials did not know where I had gone or what I was doing, because as yet I had said nothing to the Jews or the priests or the nobles or officials or anyone who would be doing the work. But he's got a plan. He's got a why. He's got his what. And now he's ready to take it on. He's ready to influence. If you can find your why and you can get a hold of a what, here's what we're going to do. Guys, lead your family. Show up in front of your wife and call a family meeting with her and say, "Babe, here's the deal. I want to grow in the Lord. I want our marriage to stay strong. I want us to be incredibly happy. Not just survive, but I want us to be incredibly happy 20 years from now. A while back, my wife and I we had these set of things that we would go, let's just say that we'd go a few rounds about every few months, all right? It was ongoing conflict over 2 or 3 things. Now, Liz and I are very happy together. Okay, we are, right, babe? Okay, thank you. All right, good. All right. We're very happy together, and we do love it. We love each other, and she gave me permission to say that, and so we're really truly we're not going to ever leave each other. It's not an option. The word divorce is not in our vocabulary. It was never an option. We knew we're going into this. There's no chance we're ever going to. We're either going to be happily married or unhappily married, but we're going to be married. Okay, so that's that. But let's be honest. You can have lots of sincerity on the day of your wedding. Ours was a little 15 years ago. You can have lots of sincerity on the day of your wedding, but sincerity is not enough, is it? Remember, we talked about that just a few minutes ago. Sincerity, you got to add strategy to that. You got to know what you're going to be willing to do to make your why come to pass. And so we had these 2 or 3 things that we would have conflict over. It would just eventually it would come back around. It might lay low for 3 or 4 months, but it would come back, and there would be a conversation. We'd say, no, we don't yell and scream and throw things, but we would disagree. And sometimes we disagree without prospect of resolution. Because I was opinionated. She was too. And I believe I'm right. And she believes she was right. And so here's what eventually she said, you know what, why don't we go to a marriage counselor and let's talk this through. So we did. Now, I don't know if you are freaked out by that. Oh no, the pastor's in marriage counseling. Oh no. No, let me tell you what. The truth is, we wanted to get an outside voice on this issue, on some issues, several issues that we were dealing with. We wanted to get an outside voice, and here's why. Because I told her, babe, let's do it. We'll figure it out. We'll pay for it. It costs money. That's okay. The reason is because I want to be happily married to that girl after all my kids are gone, and it's just us. I want to be happy still. I want to still be happy. I want to be genuinely glad and more in love with her on that day than I was on June 15th, 2002. That's what I want. And because we had the same why, and we put together this strategy, and we said, all right, let's do this. And when we went to the guy, there was some painful conversations that had to happen. There was some painful changing of my mind and painful changing of her mind that had to happen so we could meet in the middle on some stuff. And we got it figured out, and we worked through it. And by God's grace, it helped us to get to a different level, a different place in those areas. And I'm truly, genuinely thankful for that. A few years ago, we ran into an organization called Family ID. A friend of ours said, hey, you got to check out, back then it was called Family Vision, and he said, you got to check out this organization. My wife and I went to this seminar, and it was really helpful. So we went to the seminar, and it was a Friday seminar of Friday evening and then half of a day Saturday. So we went to it. You had to arrange for kids and babysitting and whatever else, and we did. We went to that seminar, and it was how to create your family mission and vision statements. And so if you've been in our home, you've seen on one of our walls where it says our family vision, led by one to lead others. And so that is the weekend where we hammered that out. We got together, we had a family meeting, and Nehemiah is about to have one of those family meetings. He's about to have a come to Jesus meeting. It's not in his marriage, but it's in his particular why. You're not building a wall, okay? I know that that we're not going to get up and build a wall around Oklahoma City. There's nobody going to do that. But what about the smoking, smoldering ruins that has characterized your family for 3 generations? Right? What about that set of things where half of the kids don't want to talk to each other anymore, and this one over there, they don't even see each other after 6 months, and this one over there doesn't want to I haven't seen my brother. Somebody told me that I haven't talked to my brother in 6 years. I'm not okay with that. That's not the kind of family I want to raise. we sat down and we hammered out a list of values. Here's the values. We have almost 100 family values that we sat down with. We have values that relate to us and God. We have values that relate to us and ourselves. We have values that relate to our family, and we have values that relate from our family and how we interact with the world. And we have these 4 areas of values, and we have them all written out. They're on a document on my phone. And a while back, I said, "Babe, what's our emphasis this month?" She said, "I think we need to have to deal with the family value of work." And so we worked together on it. We said, "What are we going to do?" "Well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Maybe we'll sit down with the kids and we'll watch this, and maybe we'll talk them through that, and maybe we'll have some activities and we'll do this and that." You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about a strategy. So every month on the last Friday of the month is Family Vision Night for us. So Family Vision Night means we get the family together. We try to make it as fun as possible for the little kids. We play games. We may watch something together. We'll do some kind of activity. The bottom line is this, that as we get together, we've got a strategy for building a family that lasts. We want to build a family where all the kids love Jesus with all their heart. We want to build a family where every one of them are lifelong best friends. We want to build a family where they work hard and they have good character. We want to build a family where they value education. We want to build a family, and I could go through 90 more family values with you. I'm not going to take the time to do that. Here's what I'm saying. Dads, it is not enough to say, "Yeah, I'd like to have a great family," sure. Everybody would like to have a great family. I don't know anybody who's sitting around like, "I'd like to have a terrible family." I don't know anybody who does that. But it's not enough to be sincere. Yeah, I believe you sincerely want a good marriage, but how are you going to do that? If you say, "I'm not okay with having the kind of marriage that my family, that my parents or my grandparents had. I'm not okay with that. I want a family. Here's what I want it to look like in 20 years. If you find your why, then you got to say, "Now here's how we're going to do that. Here's my strategy for getting there." So maybe you need to do what I do. Take your wife out once a week. Maybe you need to do what I do and get a book that you're going to read together. There's a great little book by Greg Johnson called "Now What Do We Do? We're Alone, Now What Do We Do?" It's questions, 5 levels of questions that talks through, that you can use this to interact and brainstorm and ask questions and get to talk through things. It's a fabulous little resource. The important thing is not that you do it like me. I want to say that again. Everybody look up here. The important thing is not that you do it like me. The important thing is that you do it, and you know why you're doing it, and you do it on purpose. There are no accidental good families. There are no accidental good relationships with the Lord. I don't know why. I just woke up one morning and I just knew God so well. No, it doesn't happen. You got to know how you're going to get there. So now look at this. The last verse. Ready? "So I gathered them together," verse 17, "and I said to them, 'You see the trouble that we're in.'" Some of you need to get together. You need to sit down with your wife. You need to sit down with your family and say, "You see the trouble that we're in," right? Like, it's not good. "Jerusalem lies in ruins. Its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God upon me and what the king had said to me." And listen here, when Nehemiah got them together and pulled everybody together, he had a plan, he had a why, he had a what, he had his strategy in place. And when he got them together and he cast the vision, here's what they said. They replied, "Let us start rebuilding." So they began this good work. You got to get up and you got to start at some point. You got to push go. You got to pull the trigger. You got to jump. Whatever word expression you want to put on it, you've got to have a moment where you say, "And now we're doing it. And now we're doing it. I don't have it all together. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm stepping out in faith. We're getting out of the boat so we can walk on the water." You've got to have that moment where you say go. So what is your why? Why do you want what you want? What is it you want more than anything else in the world? Do you want a relationship with the Lord that will carry you through anything? Do you want a marriage that'll last forever? Do you want a happy family? Do you want kids that love you and loved each other and love Jesus? Do you want a city that is different than it is right now? Do you want a community and an apartment complex that's different than the way it is right now? Do you want to see your family changed and saved? What is the vision? What is your why? Now figure out your strategy and then ask God's help and take the plunge and say, now it's time to go. Let's do it. All right. I want you to bow your heads together with me. And let's pray.